the week goes, maybe share a picture of your kombucha, you know, as we taste it over the week, you know, share what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, and you can post your questions there too, and we're gonna keep an eye on the chat group and kind of share our knowledge just based on our experiences as much as we can.
I just put a link to the Facebook group in the chat, so feel free to join that. We'll be updating that and yeah, sharing some pictures and that sort of thing. Yes, Alex, it's going to be recorded. Good question. Alberto, welcome. Just joined. I saw John's there. Dave, yeah, he's there too. Yeah, we're going to record it and then we'll share it on our Facebook page after that. Cool. Anything else, Samira? What do we? That was it.
Yeah, that's
what's going on this week.
Yeah, that's a good overview of what the week is going to look like.
Cool. So what we thought we would do is on Zoom, it's pretty cool. You can do breakout groups. So like you can leave your video off, but what we'll do is like unmute everybody and go into a breakout group of about 3 or 4 people. And then what we want you to do, because like Samira was saying, it's like it's challenging like connecting with people these days. So what we thought we would do is like share a story of our first sip of kombucha, and we thought you could share your story of your first sip of kombucha with some people in the group. So what I'll do in a couple minutes is just like send everybody to a breakout group. So essentially you'll have a little pop-up that'll say you've been sent to breakout group number 4. You go to accept, and then it'll be a smaller group of 3 or 4 of you. And yeah, just get to know each other, say hi, chat about your first sip of kombucha. And then after about 5-7 minutes, we'll bring everybody back to the big group. And then what we'll do, we'll start making some kombucha at that point. So
and just to get us started, we'll share our story of our first sip.
Okay.
And maybe you can start it because you're the one who actually, you introduced it to me.
That's true, because your first sip was from a bottle that I got.
Yeah.
So we were living in the Byward Market, and this was like
in Ottawa.
Ottawa, like 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
4 years ago, went for went for a jog. It was like a hot summer day, and I came back, and we live in this like little courtyard in an apartment building, and there was a cafe, and it was like I said, it was hot. Just went for a jog. I didn't want to get a coffee or a tea. I didn't want a pop. I didn't want a bottle of water. So I was just like struggling to find something. So I went in and looked in like the little display. There's this like little stubby bottle, and I was like, I'll take it. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, I love food and drink. I love trying new things. So I said, I'll take it. So they popped it open, and it started like fizzing a little bit. And I went outside and I started drinking it. I was like, what is this? And I looked at it, it was like artisan kombucha. So it was like from Perth, Ontario. I'm not sure if any of you know artisan kombucha. So I was like reading it, and I was like, oh, this is kombucha. Like, what is this? So I went back in, but I was like, this is just so delicious. So I went back in, bought like 2 more bottles, went up to the apartment. Samira finished work, came home, and like as soon as she walked in, I was like, you have to taste this stuff.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if anyone had a similar experience where it's, yes, Perth is an amazing kombucha artisan. It's definitely one of our favorites. But just to kind of experience it and be like, there's nothing else, out there that's like this.
It's like refreshing, bubbly, non-alcoholic. It's like healthy.
Sweet.
It's it's really a nice, fun. refreshing thing. So okay, I'm gonna throw everybody into breakout rooms. What we'll do is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Let's do 5 breakout rooms, 3 to 4 in each one. And so for the next for 5 to 7 minutes, like I said, just introduce yourselves, share your first sip, and then we'll come back and we'll start brewing some kombucha.
excited to make some kombucha.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
I'll break out ready for close in 30 seconds. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are just for questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's keep on.
When you left the blue wall,
Oh, no. That's when I left?
Oh yeah, there
That's
we go.
Looks like everybody's back in.
Great. I hope there were, not too many, I hope you guys got a chance to chat and not too many technical difficulties. I know Drew's actually quite a pro. He uses Zoom quite a bit for his work, but sometimes there's unexpected challenges.
Right. So
yeah, we're gonna go ahead and make some kombucha now.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, get all your ingredients together. We'll start brewing it together. So in the next like 15 minutes, we'll brew some tea, add some sugar, cool it down a little bit to make sure that it's the right temperature for the SCOBY to go in, so it's nice and happy when it's swimming around your sweet tea. And we'll put a little top on it, and then that's it. Your kombucha should be ready to go.
Yeah. So we're gonna do the concentrate version, correct? To show them how to put the SCOBY in?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different ways of starting. So what I would suggest right now is if you have some water boiling, that's great. If you don't, go start boiling the kettle, put it on the stove, whatever you need to do to just get some like hot water ready to brew some tea. And what we're gonna be doing is a 1 gallon brew, which is disappearing in the virtual background. And if you don't have the kombucha brewing equipment, I don't know if some of you saw, but you could like order it from us. We've got a kit that has the sugar, the tea, the 1 gallon jug, a little thermometer on it, so you can kind of manage the temperature of the kombucha to make sure that it's happy. Yeah, and if you do have all this stuff, then let's start brewing.
Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and make a tea concentrate, and the reason is we want to cool it down quickly so that we can show you how to put the starter and the SCOBY in. But for the rest of you, feel free to kind of brew your whole gallon of tea and let it cool down naturally.
Yeah, so there's 2 different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
One is like what I usually do is like add the tea bag in here, put the water in, and I fill it up, but then it takes like overnight to cool, because when you put the SCOBY in, the water can't be like boiling hot, otherwise it kills the SCOBY. So one trick that we do is we have our jug, we put our tea, and what we're using is like 3 to 4 tablespoons of tea.
Mm-hmm.
Let me grab the water.
So you can see we are not filling it all the way up to the top because we want to make this a concentrate to which we can then add room temperature water, and we can put our SCOBY and our starter in just to show you kind of what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, feel free to do it, the other way, which is kind of filling it up with your boiling water all the way to the top. So we're going to let this steep for 5 to 6 minutes.
Yeah, so it depends on your tea. So the one that we're using right now and that's in the kits is a tea blend. So it's a blend of black tea and green tea. And we've used white tea, we've used black tea, we've used green tea, all sorts of different teas. And it's like typically always like worked out, but it's a matter of like flavor and what you want to get out of it. So when we're talking about the kombucha brewers, like one of the best ways of trying to figure out what kombucha works for you is to go buy a few different kombucha brands and look at what sort of tea they use when they're brewing it. So in our experience, like when we use black tea, it's a little bit, I guess, like more like robust flavor. It's like fuller flavor.
A bit more bitter.
Yeah, a little bit more bitter.
Yeah.
And then what we love making is like green tea kombucha. So we use green sencha tea typically, and that gives like a really nice clean flavor. So if you like the flavor of tea and black tea, then go ahead and use that. If you want to kind of layer some more subtle flavors, then I would suggest more of like a green tea. And we've even made it with some white tea, which is a little bit more expensive, but it's a lot lighter in flavor.
So we do have some questions.
So Alberto, you were asking, I need a thermometer, can't find it anywhere here in Ecuador, South America. Well, thanks for joining from Ecuador, South America. Yeah, in terms of like the temperature, it's like a nice to have. This one goes on the outside of the jar to let you know like how, it's not necessarily talking about the temperature of the water, but it's more just the temperature of the brewing. And most kombucha is like happy around like the 24 degrees Celsius, 22 to 24 degrees Celsius, 72 to 76 Fahrenheit.
But we've never, yeah, I mean, typically when we brew at home, we're just kind of showing this because it's part of the kit, but when we brew at home, we don't use a temperature gauge. We just we let the water get down to room temperature, and then we add our SCOBY and our starter. We're not checking the temperature before we do that or throughout the process. I also saw someone asked if they could use tap water. That's what we use. I know that if you go online and search, some people will say you have to use, distilled water, but we've used tap water and haven't had any trouble keeping our SCOBYs healthy or with the brew itself.
And there's lots of different, like one of the reasons we did this too, and when we were talking about like kind of sharing some of our experience, it really is just about like your own experience, because like you can go on, I'm sure everybody's gone on YouTube and Google to just like look at kombucha brewing methods and recipes and ideas and that sort of thing, and it could get overwhelming in terms of like thinking of rules of like don't use tap water, use this sugar, don't use that sugar. And from our experience, it's like we've never
gone
been
wrong.
Bad. Yeah, exactly. It's never been bad. And plus it's like it's a lot to like just buy spring water to make your own kombucha at home. So I think in the long run, like a lot of when you think of like the rules of making kombucha, those rules apply if you're making it commercially. So if you need to make kombucha every single day and you're producing thousands of gallons, then you need to put some standards in place. But if you're making it at home, then those standards you don't really need.
Yeah, exactly. Someone I saw asked what temperature the water is that we put into the concentrate. Yeah,
What is that?
Here, Jean. So we'll just.
How cold is the water that you add after?
Yeah. Right. So we'll just use just like kind of room temperature. We want to bring it to room temperature essentially. So we're not going to put like ice cold water in it, and it'll be it'll be cool, but not ice cold.
Yeah.
Exactly. But again, I think it's important to just not try not to get too bogged down in the minutia, because your kombucha will work out, and you just kind of have to trust in the process.
Yeah, I think so too. And don't forget, you can like just throw your questions or comments into the chat. Yes, John, we sell the kits. We don't have the just individual SCOBYs. So you can also grow your own SCOBY. So something that people always ask is like, oh, I've got sugar and water and tea at home, but I don't have a SCOBY. So you can get one with our kit, like part of the kit in there. If you want to grow one at home, if you have everything else, then what we do is go to the store, buy a bottle of like original kombucha. So typically we find GT's original kombucha, and you pour like the whole bottle or half a bottle into a container, and you put a little cloth on top of it, and you wait for a week, and a SCOBY shows up.
Yeah.
So you can make your own just by buying the original kombucha and waiting for a week or 2 weeks, and your little SCOBY will show up.
Mm-hmm. So we should probably take our tea out now. It's been
6 minutes.
Been 6 minutes, exactly. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the tea bag and then add our water. Yeah, so Alberto also asked, because he says the room temperature where he is right now is 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a bit warmer than in Gatineau. And that just means that, as Stecco, thanks for answering, it's fine, but yes, it will brew faster. So it'll ferment faster. That's why at the beginning I said, we're going to do this over 7 days, but it might, you might be ready to bottle, maybe even a day before that or a few days after. And one of the reasons for that is the temperature in your house. So the warmer it is, the faster it'll ferment and kind of turn towards more of that kind of vinegary flavor, which happens with the fermentation.
Nice, thumbs up. Yeah, it's true. So like different seasons are definitely influencing how your kombucha brews at home. So sometimes you might notice like in the summer, it takes 7 days to ferment. And then in the winter, it takes 14 days to ferment. And that's like Samira said, it just has to do with temperature. So the warmer it is, the faster it will ferment. And then the cooler it is, the slower it will ferment. So before we put the cold water in, we're going to add our sugar. Mm-hmm. So with our 1 gallon recipe, like I was saying, it's 3 to 4 tablespoons of tea. And then we add 1 cup of sugar to the hot tea. And just mix that until it's completely dissolved. And then we're going to add our cold water or cool water to make sure that it's at room temperature. Then it's going to be happy for the SCOBY to jump in and swim around.
Mm-hmm. Another, Theodore had a question about sugar and substituting with stevia or agave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sugar, another good question. We talked a little bit about the tea. So sugar, again, we're not rule makers or rule breakers, but when you think of like a sweetener for kombucha, you need a sweetener for the SCOBY to eat and for it to like ferment. So you need some sort of sweetness. So we've experimented with like raw cane sugar and table sugar and coconut sugar and I don't know, a couple other different things. So what I would say is, sure, try substituting, but maybe substitute it in like a smaller batch to see if it would work or not work, because I can't tell you whether it will work or not.
Yeah, we could, we've never tried stevia or agave, but we could, that's a question we could ask our pros tomorrow is if those, because really like, the SCOBY needs certain things in order to survive. It needs caffeine, it needs sugar. So I'm not actually sure if stevia and agave contain the elements that that kombucha needs, or that SCOBY needs to survive. I'm not sure if anyone else has experience with that. So our vessel, this is a 1 gallon vessel, right, Drew?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many, I'm gonna just ask if it's 4 liter. I'll have to see how many liters we have here.
In a gallon?
Yeah.
We just filled it up with our cool water.
So yeah, it's about 4 liters, Jean.
Perfect. Nikki, 4.5 is a gallon.
Yeah.
What'd Stecco say? Usually you need raw sugar, but it works with most types of sugar as long as it has enough nutrients in it. Not sure about substitutes like stevia, but agave is good. Yeah, that's the thing is like if there is sugar in it, then you can use it. But if a sugar substitute like aspartame or stevia, I'm not sure. And by the sounds of it, it probably might not work out. But again, just you can always try it.
Yeah, we'll ask the pros tomorrow.
Yeah. I know somebody said if I use tea bags for 4 liters, how many tea bags? We should make a WhatsApp group. That would be good too. So yeah, I think a tea bag is like, I don't know,
Probably
like
about a tablespoon
or something like that. So I would say like 3 to 4 tea bags. But again, it's like if you use 5 tea bags or you use 2 tea bags or 7 tea bags, it's still going to work out. It just might be a different taste that you don't want. It might be too bitter. It might be too tea forward or something like that. So it's like
too caffeinated.
Don't be afraid of just experimenting and going for it, right?
So we talked about room temperature as one of the things that will affect how quickly your kombucha ferments. Another thing that will affect it is the size of your SCOBY. So for example, we'll just show you our kombucha hotel here. Again, we're not using this today. We'll use the same SCOBY that's in the kits. But you can see we've got this really big SCOBY at the top. I mean, we probably wouldn't use that in a jar this size. We would definitely, peel it or chop it up or something. But if you were, on the extreme to put a SCOBY this size in here, it'll ferment a lot faster. So the size of the SCOBY and also the strength of the starter liquid that you use. So we've in the past used GT's original kombucha as the starter liquid, it's kombucha, so it's not as strong as a starter. But if we use kind of the liquid that's in our SCOBY hotel, which is much stronger, then we'll get a faster fermentation and also just a bit more of that vinegar forward flavor in the kombucha.
Yeah. So so when you make your SCOBY, like Samira was saying, so if you make your SCOBY with that GT's original, when you're making your kombucha, you need the SCOBY, but you also need a little bit of starter liquid. And that starter liquid could be just the GT's original. So a complete at-home hack, if you don't want to buy a kit, is you buy a bottle of GT's original and you pour it into a jar, like I said, and then cover it with a cloth, wait for like 7 to 10 days, and then you'll get a SCOBY, plus you'll have some starter liquid, and you can use that to make your kombucha. And yeah, we've done it like both ways, like Samira was saying, and it's like with the GT's original, I like using that as a starter liquid because it's a less vinegary than the one that we have, and we like a less vinegary tasting kombucha, while some other people like more vinegary tasting. So it just totally depends on
your flavor.
What you want. Yeah, exactly.
You like, your personal style, for sure.
Yeah. A few people were asking about using honey and like maple syrup and that sort of thing. So there's also, we have to just take one quick step back and look at the kombucha making as the first fermentation and a second fermentation. So when we're talking about sugar for the first fermentation, which is what we're talking about like right now, that's different than adding sugar in a second fermentation when you're actually bottling it and adding like fruit juice or more sugar and that sort of thing. So that's more for adding like, let's say, a maple syrup, because you can add more flavor instead of just using a cup of maple syrup as a sugar. Because really the sugar you're putting in the first,
it's just
it's just food for the SCOBY.
Yeah.
So so I'd experiment more in the second fermentation with a few different sweets. And someone mentioned honey. So kombucha made from honey is June kombucha, and you need a different SCOBY for that, because the SCOBY that typically is used for kombucha eats sugar. It doesn't eat raw honey. So you actually need a different SCOBY that is adapted to eating honey in order to make a honey-based kombucha. So the challenge with, you can't just use your regular SCOBY and make a honey-based June kombucha. That being said, in the second fermentation, you can throw a little bit of honey in there for taste.
There's some questions about your SCOBY and trimming it. In the past, we've peeled it, we've cut it. I think as long as you're not picky about how it looks in the jar, absolutely you can, take some scissors to it and just kind of chop it up and cut it to size. Our personal at-home recipe, we've kind of measured out the weight of the SCOBY that we like in order to achieve the kombucha that we like. So as you kind of brew and you use your scobies, you'll kind of get to know the size of the SCOBY that works for you. Because again, the bigger the SCOBY, the faster the fermentation. But yeah, feel free to chop it up. Feel free to, you can also sometimes you can peel the layers apart if you want to try and keep it nice round. But yeah, it's a living thing that is very resilient. So it doesn't mind being chopped up. It'll just continue to behave in the way it would if it was whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so if we were to trim it, then we would trim it just kind of right before we do our brew, and then just leave the other half in the hotel. How do you get it so white and clean? I think the longer you kind of have your hotel and your SCOBY.
It's always so crooked and weird looking. It's true. I mean, look at ours. That's like the showcase SCOBY, that one.
Yeah, which we've just chopped up.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, inside, like this one, you can see it's a little bit, some of them are a little bit more funky looking and that sort of thing. But it's a sign of a good, healthy SCOBY when it's like nice and white and uniform in color and that sort of thing. So how do you get it like that? I think you just
keep a healthy hotel. Yeah, which we'll talk about later this week.
Exactly. Keep it at a nice temperature, brew with the right ingredients and that sort of things. And it's also just, it takes time because the first time we did it, it wasn't like this, but now we're very confident in just leaving. Like we just put this down in the basement, and then 2 weeks later we get this like awesome looking SCOBY. And then once it's like nice and thick, you just kind of push it down, and
a new one will form.
And then a new one will form in there.
Yeah. But hey, if your SCOBY is funky and weird looking, just give it a funky name and appreciate it for what it is.
Okay, final step. We'll answer that question in a sec.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do is throw in our SCOBY and starter liquid.
We're smiling right now because we put our 1-year-old down for a nap and we can hear him banging around in his crib right now. So this is good timing. We'll have to sign off in a few minutes.
So we got our about what is it? 1 cup, 1 to 2 cups of starter liquid. So if you have your own SCOBY hotel, 1 to 2 cups, and if you're going to use a GT's original or another original kombucha, then it's 1 to 2 cups, and then there's a little SCOBY in there. So we're just going to drop them right in.
You can kind of see it floating around in there. It'll it might rise, and then the next day you check it, it might kind of sink more towards the middle of the jar. As some bubbles start to build in there, it'll kind of push it up towards the surface, and then you'll also see kind of a new SCOBY forming on the top ring, which isn't mold, but if you are wondering what you're seeing on the top and aren't sure if it's mold or new SCOBY, feel free to post a picture of the group and we'll give you some advice on that.
Or we'll name it too.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can name them. There's a couple questions here. When is the best time to add fruits for different flavors? So we'll talk about that later in the week. That's more for the second fermentation. So the first part of it, the first 7 to 10 days, is just getting a good base. And what I would also suggest and urge you is just don't worry about the flavoring until you have a good base. Because if you don't have a good base of kombucha, a good base that you could layer flavor on top of, then it doesn't really matter if you're going to have a pineapple kombucha or a strawberry raspberry kombucha. The first thing to do is just really kind of master this, getting a great base and knowing the flavor that you like out of it, and then thinking of the flavors. But the best time to add fruits and different flavors would be after 10 days, once it's ready for the second fermentation and putting into bottles.
So we'll just try to I see quite a few questions, and some of these will be answered throughout the week. maybe just some of the more immediate things, like how do you know when it's time to add your starter liquid?
Because the tea water is still too hot.
Yeah, so you want it to get down to room temperature. That's why typically we'll just kind of leave it overnight and then do it, add it the next morning.
Yeah, so definitely wait for it to be room temperature. If it's warm, don't put the SCOBY in. If it's hot, don't put the SCOBY in. It's better to just be a little bit extra, have a little bit extra patience in terms of that aspect of it. So that's that. And then somebody was talking about carbonation. We'll talk about carbonation again, the second fermentation, that sort of thing. But then again, just stressing, focus on this first batch, focus on the first, like the base of your kombucha, and then you can layer and do that, because you can't do everything at once. You're not going to be able to make the best perfect kombucha the first time you do it. And if you do it the first time, you probably can't do it a second time. So it's taken us like dozens and dozens and dozens of different kombucha processes and experiments to actually get
ingredients. Yeah.
So, and it's an ongoing process, and it's also a living organism. So it changes every single day. I was watching an interview today with a professional kombucha brewer in London, in the UK, and he was saying, we ferment like hundreds of thousands of gallons of kombucha every day, and they do it, and they would say like the one tank here, even though we started it at the same time as this tank, it acts differently. It might take an extra day, or might ferment a little bit faster. So it is a living organism, and it changes daily and that sort of thing. So I think one of the best things to do, especially from a home brewer perspective, and what we'll be doing like this week, is just tasting it. So taste it right now, taste it tomorrow, taste it in the morning, taste it in the afternoon, just get used to it. And then you can see how it evolves. It changes from sweet to tangy to sour to bubbly, but don't be afraid of it. The more you interact with it, the more you'll understand it and know
how it's changing.
Know a little bit about it. So yeah, we'll wrap up in a couple minutes here.
Yeah. There are some questions about tea, herbal tea, Earl Grey. So we're gonna just save those for tomorrow, and we can answer those, and we can also get our expert to talk a bit more about ingredients.
Yeah, definitely, because like there are different like subtleties in terms of using Earl Grey tea or tisanes or non-caffeinated teas that we haven't like experimented too much with. That, like you said, we'll just leave it with the experts, because they know the chemistry behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we'll just end it there. Again, apologies. We hear our 1-year-old is really banging around and probably needs to be picked up. So if there's any other questions as well, you can post them in the Facebook chat group, and as long as the answer isn't too lengthy, we'll try to address them as much as we can.
Yes, that looks good.
All right, awesome.
Is that showing some? Yeah, there you go. Feel free to share your pictures. Yes.
Great.
Feel free to share your pictures in the Facebook group and that sort of thing. And any journeys or troubles or questions that you have and that sort of thing, we'll just we'll connect again tomorrow and the rest of the week. We'll spend some more time together, get some more kombucha experts on. Yeah. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bright and bubbly, sassy and free. Kombucha cutie, my favorite foodie. She's a female fermenting for men like me.